New product development. If we have to select one output, one tangible output of innovation management, this would be new product development, which is a landmark feature, a landmark impact of innovation management on the overall strategy and business in an organization. But how can we ensure that our new product development is successful? Because the odds are against new product development. Despite all the focus, the emphasis on innovation management and how to foster, promote, drive new innovations, numbers, data tell us a different story. More than 95% of new product development projects fail to earn an economic return. It doesn't matter if this is fostered by a large organization or by more agile, more entrepreneurial firm. The data show that new product development, the output of innovation management, is most likely one of the most challenging projects that a company can do. So what we try to understand better throughout this video lecture would be how we can promote new product development and what are the best practices that can help us ensure the success of a new product development, or if we can't get to this point, at least to minimize the risk of failure of our new product development. Without further ado, let's now dig deeper into new product development. What are the objectives of new product development process? There are primarily three main goals that we aim to achieve via new product development. The first one is to maximize the product fit with our customer requirements. The second one is to minimize the development cycle time. And the third one is to monitor the development cost. Let's turn to the first one. Maximizing the product fit with our market, with our customer requirements. These might be actually the very initial challenge that companies face. And why this happens? Well, there are a few factors impacting companies here. One is that sometimes companies do not have a clear sense of what the customer value the most. So when they create a new product, they can't really prioritize what are the most important features, or sometimes even they miss the real need of the customers. The second reason is that sometimes companies, to an extent, overestimate the willingness of customer to pay for some features, and so they create products with so many features, and then eventually these products will become too pricey for the customers, who will provide features that actually customers are not interested in. And the final factor is that companies, when they move forward with their new product development, they would like to try to satisfy many customers, sometimes even conflicting type of customers. And this is of course a problem, because then with different customer demands, then you actually compromise, and sometimes this is not what your customers really want. Let me give you some examples about this challenge, maximizing the product fit with customer requirements. A case in point could be the Newton pad. So this was one of the first personal devices developed by Apple. As you can see here in the picture, it was slightly bigger than an iPhone, and it did offer some very advanced features for the time. For example, it did have already like the handwriting feature, so similarly to what like tablet, like the iPad offer now. However, it didn't really fit with the expectation and the need of a market. For a few reasons. One is, of course, the size. You can see this compared to the iPhone. I mean, it was big, so it was not that easy to carry around. And for people, I mean, they didn't really clearly see the advantage of this device compared to a laptop. There was also at the beginning some struggles to recognize handwriting when Apple fixed this problem later on, but at the beginning this was an issue, and of course like many users like got this first impression. And also the screen, so the very first had a rather small screen, and so this couldn't really fit with the purpose of being like a personal notepad and also taking notes or with handwriting. So this is an example of a product that didn't really meet what the customer were expecting from the product. Another example, still on this factor of maximizing the product fit with customer requirement. So this comes from Philips. This is actually in the gaming industry. So the CDI. So the CDI was the response by Philips to PlayStation and other gaming console. But as you can see, this had like superior features compared to similar equivalent products by Philips competitors, but also superior price, $800 in 1989, which was definitely a very high price tag. So this is an example of excessive attributes in the product that customer didn't really demand, and consequently conflicting with the right product positioning, which was basically the product positioning of competitors. Let's now turn to the second one. Second one is on the development cycle time. So we know that there are some advantages when you are the first mover to come up with new innovations. We also know that there are sometimes advantages when you are the second mover. Second mover means that the company is following what other companies already did. So the first mover paved the way for new innovations to be adopted. And of course, if you want to be a first mover, so you need to minimize the development cycle time. The faster your development cycle time, the more likely you are to be a first mover in the market and to be ahead of competitors and to initiate a new S-curve of technology development and consequently the S-curve of technology adoption. So a few reasons to minimize the development cycle time will include to gain brand loyalty. If you are the first in the market, then consumers will identify the new innovation with your product. Consumer, for example, calling still now four-wheel driving vehicles, off-road vehicles, calling them Jeep, named after the Jeep brand in the US, even though technically many of them are from other brands, from other American, Japanese, or European brands, but still there is this strong identification. Additionally, you can capture scarce resources. For example, raw materials, critical raw materials, supply of raw materials, or relationship with suppliers, or relationship with distributors, and so on. And also, when you are the first, you can create the switching cost. The switching cost that will enable your company to lock in the customer. Switching cost is when you onboard customer in your system and when you create some barriers for your customer to get out of your system. Nespresso machine combined with Nespresso capsule, you lock in customers. Nespresso will always tell you, never use compatible capsule, will destroy your machine. Because we want to lock in customers. We try their best to create barriers so that once customers are in it, they can't get out any longer. When you minimize the development cycle time, you can also encourage the creation of complementary products. In some cases, you can be the one creating complementary products. In some other cases, you can actually just influence other companies to create complementary goods that are compatible with your technology. Microsoft is a master at this game, at creating or encouraging other software products to be integrated within the Microsoft ecosystem. So we discuss about the benefits of minimized cycle time. What is the cycle time? The cycle time is essentially all the time that it takes from a project initiation until the commercial launch in the market. This development cycle time depends on industry. In electronics, it's very short, 12 months. In automotive, development cycle time is minimum, generally is like 18 months. But this means that generally you're using some platform that are already like engineering platform that are already in your company, up to 2-3 years, or even slightly longer if you are building all the engineering from scratch. In food and drug, and especially in medicine, the development cycle time can be even longer. 5-7 years, including all the clinical trials and so on. So depends. There is no one size fits all when it comes to the determination of the appropriate cycle time. You need to decide this based on your industry dynamics. However, it's true for every industry that if you have a cycle time, you can enjoy the benefits of being a first mover in the market, but not only, you can also enjoy to be a second mover, because if you are able to cut down your time for development, then you can create a second generation, and the second generation will rapidly correct the problems identified in the first generation. However, it's not always good to rush things, so you should have some measures in place to avoid to make sloppy decisions or crappy development. So this is something that sort of check and balance within the firm to ensure that this is not going to happen. Final objective of a new product development process is to control the development cost. So here we would like to achieve two main objectives. Effectiveness. Effectiveness means to make things right. And efficiency, which means to make things without wasting resources, with cost minimization whenever this is possible. So these are two different concepts. Effectiveness is more towards achieving, to fulfill, to execute what you plan to do with quality. So the effectiveness is more related to the concept of delivering quality output, and the efficiency is more related to the cost savings. So to be able to minimize the cost structure in your organization. So after understanding about the three main objectives of a new product development, so what are the best practices which we can adopt to implement the new product development process? So originally, the typical way to do the new product development was a sequential process. So the sequential process, which you can find here in the slide, will start from the opportunity identification, moving on to the concept development, product design, the process design, and the commercial production. However, this implied that the cycle time was longer. And also it implied that there was not so much communication along this journey, along these different steps. So it could be that, during the concept development, the product design, the process design, engineers would have come up with some different ideas that were not feasible in the commercial production. And so then later on, the concept, the original engineering idea needed to be adjusted, because when it came to do the commercial production, the production team pointed out that some solutions were not easy to manufacture in large scale. So this is a typical conflict when you're doing prototyping and you are producing, just a few examples of your product. So you can be more courageous in the design of a product. But when you need to produce this for the mass market, so here there will be a need of standardization. And so some features, some designs would need to be adjusted. So to shorten the process and the development time, it was introduced a new way, which is a partly parallel development process, which ensured closer coordination between the different stages. This is an idea of concurrent engineering. So the product development, the production, and also later on the maintenance of a product to have closer communication, so as to ensure that since the very beginning all the possible requirements of a production, of a maintenance, and so on are carefully analyzed and considered. So as you can see, the partly parallel development process basically conducted at the same time synchronously the development of a concept, the product design, and the process design, and then later on move on to the commercial production. However, also in the case of a partly parallel process, there could be some risk. So there could be some risk because there is no clear checkpoint. There is no clear evaluation whether this new product development is hitting the milestones or not. So there is a lack of controlling whether this new product development is going in the right direction or not. Some alternative methodologies to the parallel process include the Project Champion. Project Champion has been introduced first in America, Europe, and in Japan. And the idea here is that since new product development is very challenging, you need some senior executives that will champion for the new product development. So here there are quite a few clear benefits of having this senior member of your organization, highly respected senior member of your organization. Well, one for all is they have power to fight for the project, so they can buy in the support of other key stakeholders to push for the project. They have easier access to resources, from talents to budgeting, capital. They also have a lot of experience in the firm, which means that they are able to communicate across different division and department of a firm, even across different business unit, and to smooth up the process of a new product development. There are also some risk in this case. So, of course, senior executives, we do have already some strong power in the organization. Having also this additional responsibility, it means that they will become more powerful, and so it could be that other people in the team will be reluctant to point out whether the new product development is not going in the right direction. And so this at the end may reduce the evaluation, the judgment about the project and the real potential of a project. With a champion kind of like falling in love with a project and having the power and the resources to still steer the project, even though it became clear that the project is not going into the right direction. And so in some cases, companies created this role of anti-champions. So the anti-champions are other managers that are championing a dissenting opinion, similar to the court decision, where there is a judge that generally will express a dissenting opinion towards the majority. So this is to ensure that still there is a healthy brainstorming in the organization. There are also some myths about the project champion, and studies show that some of these myths are actually not true or not supported by data and evidences. So one myth is that the product champions are more likely to be successful in the market, and this is not proven by data. So there are so many factors at play. This is not the only factor to consider. The second myth is that the champions do this only because they like the project. This is actually not completely true. They like the project, but there is also a strong component of self-interest related to their career, or maybe if you're already senior enough and they don't care so much about career advancement because they already reached the top of the organization, but could be a matter of legacy. What you pass down to the next generation of executives in the organization. Or another reason could be to increase the power of a department, the one that they are leading. The third myth is that champions would promote more radical innovation. And again, data don't prove this. They can be equally involved in radical and in incremental innovation. Champions are more likely to be from high or from low levels of a firm. Actually, these can both be. So we don't see, clearly where they come from in the firm. So both options are possible. Champions are more likely to come from a marketing department. And again, this is not proven by researches, by studies, because they can come from R&D, they can come from other functions as well. An additional way to be able to meet your customer requirements and to tackle the challenge that we have seen at the beginning, which is a lack of market fit when we develop a new innovation, is to involve our customer as early as possible. This is because customer will identify better than the company the maximum performance capabilities and the minimum service requirements. Also, customer can come up with stronger and more innovative ideas. Studies show that generally firms tend to promote incremental innovation because this is a sort of bias within the organization. They have already capabilities related to the current products. So the idea is we develop a new generation of the current products. And there is generally smaller budget allocated for radical innovation. But customers may actually be the one pushing for a more radical innovation. The customer can also work with the new product development team, or they can do the beta testing, so to give early on inputs on the development process. So this generally comes from the experience of software companies with so-called minimum viable product for testing, which is basically to spin off, to separate the different feature of a software, and then for each of them, let the customer give some feedback. So instead of like delivering the full product to the customer, you just like divide your product into smaller chunks, and then you let customer test each of these. It's also important to identifying who are the lead users. Here, we need to recall the concept of S-curve of technology adoption. The lead users are the early adopters, are the customer who experience these pain points earlier on and that would benefit more from the solution. So if you identify these customers, they can lead the way, they can pave the way for the technology adoption, they will give actually much more valuable contribution to your new product development. Another way for companies to gather ideas from customers is through crowdsourcing. So this is a typical way to get ideas, gauge innovative ideas from the public. This is so-called like crowdsourcing. It's a landmark feature of open innovation ecosystem. Crowdsources can be implemented with some caveat. One is that when you do crowdsourcing, you need to translate what you would like to do in a very general, broad, comprehensive way, because sometimes the solution to your new product development problem can come from a completely different technology or a completely different discipline. So it's important if you let everyone from every science and technology field come in and maybe find a solution that you couldn't think of because it's a solution that was adopted in another industry or by using a different technology. And then, of course, you need to connect with the ideators. You need to carefully select the best idea, and then you need to ensure the knowledge transfer to your organization. The good thing is that many crowdsourcing platforms, crowdsourcing companies will offer these services. So you don't have to do this in-house in your firm, but you can refer to crowdsourcing platforms instead. One more method to improve the likability of success of a new product development is to involve suppliers. So you can team up with your suppliers to work together on the product design and also on the development efficiency. And generally, suppliers can come in with alternative inputs. They can increase the effectiveness, but they can also increase the efficiency of a production. For example, case in point was the Boeing 777, which included a lot of inputs with a supplier. So this was almost a new product development that was shared by Boeing with all the other suppliers in a team effort, like an alliance of Boeing with the suppliers to do the new product development. Another very good way to implement your new product development is the so-called stage gate process. So the stage gate process solves the pain points that we mentioned earlier, especially the pain points of a lack of control. In the pain point of development budget that will become huge because there is no monitoring and you keep going on maybe on the wrong path and keep adding resources and you are not really in control of where the project is going. So the gate stage process will basically utilize these go or kill decision points. So there will be like gates, like checkpoints, and at each checkpoint then you need to decide, am I gonna kill the project because it's not on track, it's not achieving the requirements that I need the project to achieve, or am I gonna go on with the project because I'm perfectly in line with my objective and so on. Or maybe I need to hold the project because there is lack of clarity about the project success and where the project is moving forward. What are these different gates, these different checkpoints? So first one is the idea screening. And this will move on to the stage one, which is the scoping. scoping is to identify the perimeter of a project. And here you just use some information, you don't need to go that deep yet. The second checkpoint is to see whether you need to move to the building of a business case. The business case is from both perspectives, from the marketing perspective and from the engineering technology perspective. So you need to define the production plan, the project justification, the market, the overall plan, the technology you're going to use, and so on. At this point, you will evaluate the business case. Is the business case sound or not? If it is, you go on. If it's not, you either hold it or you kill it. At this point, you move on into the development stage with product design, development, testing, and so on. If also this part is successful, so you can move forward with testing and validation. You can also have some trial selling because you really want to be exposed early on to the commercialization. And then the gate 5 will be whether the product is ready for commercialization or not. Keep in mind, it's also important to have a final checkpoint, which is the post-launch review. How was the project performed? How can we improve? What did we learn from the project? When we adopt the gate stage tool, so we can also identify specifically the time that we are going to use for each stage and the checkpoint, and also the cost that we are going to use. And in the good point here is that we do not have just an overall budget, $1 million, $10 million, but we have a specific budget for each stage, which means that we don't have to waste resources because we are not controlling the project, but we can control the project stage by stage, step by step. And if a project didn't meet the requirements, then we can kill the project. And of course, the remaining budget will not be utilized for this product development, but can be allocated to a different alternative project. I show you and presented the stage gate product development, new product development process. However, each firm can create its own tool for new product development. So you don't have to just follow the standard, but you can customize the best tool that really meet the requirements of your organization. Example here is the one from Exxon. So Exxon added some additional steps because this was more in line with the type of research and development created by Exxon. Exxon has a strong expertise in research and development, and so they added further stages and gates to ensure that the specific nature of the firm was emphasized and valued by this tool. This is anyway a very successful tool. Roughly 60% of firms doing new product development, they will adopt some sort of stage gate process. However, it's not the only one. So we can see a couple of more technique to do our new product development. One technique comes from Japan, and it's the house of quality. Here, the main objective is to enhance the communication and coordination between the engineering department, the marketing department, and the manufacturing department, production department. Here I'm giving you an example coming from the automotive industry of Japan. So this is how we can identify the most important attributes that customers value the most in a car's door. And there are 5 main attributes that customers value the most, including, for example, that water is not leaking into the car, that the door ensures that there is no noise within the car, and that also the door is able to protect passengers and the driver against crash and so on. So essentially, we can use this matrix, and as you can see, here we have the customer requirements of a door: easy to open, stays open on the hill, does not leak, isolate occupant from road noise, and crash protection, versus the engineering attributes, from the importance, from the weight of a door, the stiffness, the tightness of a door, the tightness of a window sill, and also some examples from the competitors. So the house of quality will use also a step-by-step process. So you identify first the customer requirement, the 5 most important attributes for the door. You weight the requirements in terms of relative importance. You identify the engineering attributes driving the performance. Then you will make a correlation between different engineering attributes. You will identify the relationship between engineering attribute and the customer requirement. This is done in the center part of a matrix on a 1 to 9 scale. And then you multiply the customer importance rating by relationship to the engineering attributes. And then you make a sum of this. Additionally, you are going to evaluate what competitors are doing. And this will be done on the right-hand side of a matrix, 1 to 7 scale. Finally, using the relative importance ratings for engineering attributes, you will determine your design targets. And finally, you evaluate the new design based on the design targets. So this is also very successful, precise model that ensures that you keep into consideration the customer, the market, competitors, as well as your internal capability, the internal capabilities of your operations. One more tool is the design for manufacturing. So the design for manufacturing means that you apply a set of rules that will reduce the cost in development time, but at the same time you ensure you are increasing, you're boosting quality. So what are these design rules? For example, you minimize the number of parts. So this will make the assembly easier, you will reduce the labor, the supply chain cost, and so on, and you also can increase the quality. You minimize the number of part numbers, so you use common parts across all your family of products. You try to eliminate adjustments, so that means that you can increase automation, you eliminate fasteners, and you try also to eliminate like all the fixture, because then this will decrease your changeover cost. So again, here we can see like examples, different examples. So design for manufacturing, especially the minimization of a number of parts and minimization of part numbers, elimination of adjustments. This is very much adopted by the Japanese manufacturing industry. For instance, automotive industry in Japan. So they do really focus a lot on the standardization of components. You will find that many Japanese cars actually use basically the same components, which means that generally Japanese cars have a higher quality, higher reliability of other brands, for example, European cars, because for European cars there is no such emphasis on the minimization of a number of parts, since European car makers prioritize to differentiate their products. We prioritize the handling, the driving experience, and of course, if you need to prioritize the driving experience, then consequently you need to use more products, more parts to emphasize on the driving experience. So completely two different approaches, and you can see also that the consequences are different. The Japanese car makers emphasizing on reliability, and European car makers generally emphasizing on the luxury, unique differentiation, and on the driving performances. Design for manufacturing was created by an American engineer, Deam Kamen. I really much like this quote. So he said that it does not make sense to invent things that ultimately are made of unobtainium or expensium, meaning you create something that then either is too expensive to produce or doesn't make sense, or it's too complicated to produce, and again, does not make sense. More recently, we have seen also some other models that can help us ensure that failure errors are minimized. One is the failure mode and effect analysis. So here we identify potential failures, we categorize them according to the severity, and we also create a plan to tackle and prevent this. Let me give you an example. In the hotel industry, for example, here, one of the potential failure could be that the reservation cannot be found. Imagine the Mandarin Oriental, a family walking into the lobby of a Mandarin Oriental, the majestic lobby of a Mandarin Oriental. They paid $1,000 a night. They go to the lobby, they want to do the check-in, and then the personnel at the front desk will say, I cannot find your reservation. We already paid. So this is, of course, one of the potential failures in the hotel industry. This is what hotel would like to avoid. So how do you do this? You can follow this methodology. So you can evaluate the potential failures on these three criteria: severity, likelihood to happen, and inability of controls to detect the failure. When you give a score to each of them, you will identify the risk priority number, which is given by severity multiply likelihood of occurrence multiply the inability of controls to detect. So, and then firms may focus on threats, failures, that maybe have a lower impact, but have a higher likelihood of occurrence, or there is a higher inability to detect these failures. So it doesn't mean that you always prioritize only the severity, because sometimes there are some smaller type of failures, but still these can occur more often or are harder to detect. And so these should be tackled seriously by the firm. Additionally, one more way to speed up the new product development is the computer-aided design. So this is the so-called CAD. So you use the computer, you can create your prototype on the computer. This means that you can do rapid prototyping, inexpensive prototyping. You can also get a very quick feedback on your new product design. Even more recently, we have a computer-aided manufacturing. So this is basically type of manufacturing which will be enabled by computer. So you will control all the manufacturing machine with your computers. Also in this case, you increase flexibility, you increase also the speed. One important case is additive manufacturing. Additive manufacturing is enabled by 3D printing, three-dimensional printing, meaning that you are adding different layers of materials until your prototype is complete. This is totally different from a traditional prototyping approach, which is molding and machining, where you are subtracting parts rather than adding parts. So it's a completely different approach, but this is cheaper and faster to create new prototypes for new product development. In conclusion, we need to see what are some measures that we can use to evaluate how our new product development is going. So there are different type of measures. So we can analyze project by project, whether they meet the goals, whether they are in line with the performance of a firm, whether we can improve the resource allocation or employee compensation, and how we can redefine future strategy. However, notwithstanding all the tools, techniques, methodology you're using, it's hard to have more than 65 success rate in new product development, considering all new products launched. So even the best in the market, the companies that are really good at new product development, considering all their product portfolio, they hardly can get more than a 65% success rate. The final points would be on the metrics for new product development process. So this is arranged according to checklist, a series of questions which I will let you read in the video. So you can pause the video and take a look at the list of questions which you can apply also in your new product development or in startup projects as well. So these are the 4 questions on the cycle time, percentage development project undertaken in the past years, percentage of development project that comply with the budget, percentage of development project that led to completed product. Additionally, we can also test the overall innovation performance of a firm. So again, I invite you to take a look at the questions that can help you determine and evaluate how your firm is creating return of innovation, how the firm is able to create new innovation that achieve sales goals, and percentage of revenues generated by product development, and the ratio of successful projects compared to the entire project portfolio, the 65% success rate which I mentioned earlier. One important experience to recall is the postmortem reporting at Microsoft. So this is a very good practice that many more firms or even startup ventures should adopt. At Microsoft, almost every project will receive this post-mortem report. So it doesn't mean whether the project was successful or not successful. So this is like an ending report. That can be anything between 10 to 100 pages. This must be candid, must be critical. As Microsoft states, the purpose of this is to beat yourself up, even if the project was successful. So it's a way to really reflect and learn on the new product development process. So to conclude on what we studied in this video lecture, so first we analyzed the 3 main objectives of a new product development: the product market fit, the best way to reduce the new product development cycle time, and also the best way to control, to monitor the budget of a new product development. After identifying the objective, we moved on into different methodologies and best practices from America, from Japan, from Europe to increase the success of new product development, to reduce the new product development cycle time, and finally to ensure that the new product development complies with the budget allocated for that product. I hope you enjoy this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!